All right, greetings, family, and welcome to another episode of Cultivate Life, where it's our aim to bring you all the information we have gathered on health and wellness as it relates to our community in the African diaspora. So I hope you're ready to join today's show. Share out the link, get ready to join the discussion
health and wellness as it relates to our community in the African diaspora.
Clicking the link below.
So I hope you're ready to join today's show. Share out the link, get ready to join the discussion and wellness as it relates to our
And we'll be right back with our
So I hope you're ready to join today's show. Share out the link, get ready to join the discussion and wellness as it relates to our community. So I hope you're ready to join today's show. Share out the link, get ready to join the discussion and wellness as it relates to
Can you hear me? All right, so we're back, family. We had some issues with the audio, but we are here with our special guest, Dr. A.K. Tosu, who serves as an advisor in education and leadership. How are you today?
Nzuri sana.
Awesome.
Let me adjust this thing.
Okay, so today I invited Dr. A.K. to come on the show to talk about transforming our minds and the way we think and sort of removing ourselves from the narrative of victimization that we sometimes live under in this culture. So Dr. A.K., tell us more about your work, what you do, and how it relates to educating ourselves, becoming leaders, taking initiative, and being responsible in our community.
Well, first off, asante sana for the invite, and I'm jumbo to everybody out there listening in, whether live or whether later on. We would like to also, before anything, give honor and praise to our ancestors and our elders who have opportuned us to be actually here today to interact, not just on this medium, but in other facets as well. So all honor and praise due to the ancestors and our loving elders. Asante sana, asante sana. As far as I'm just a brother, and just intentionally, I'm a brother of Alkebulan, a son of Alkebulan, an uncle to the younger ones, and purposed and commissioned, if you will, to ensure that what our elders and those of our ancestors have instructed are being implemented by those with breath today and those yet to come. And that is the sphere of the work. So that is the gist of it. Implementer and a director of implements, if you will, when it comes to leadership and education.
Awesome. So recently, the social political climate in our country has incited a lot of, I guess, trauma and fear within our community. How would you comment on that in regards to our minds and thinking? I remember you had a class called Transformative Thinking, where it was taking the Eurocentric narrative that we've been so used to hearing and adopting in our lives, and instead of basing our decisions and our actions on that narrative, transforming our thinking into a narrative that is better, beneficial to take steps and actions to move us forward. So how would you comment on now what's happening in society with, George Floyd, and then now the political race and different riots and protesting, Black Lives Matter? How should we be thinking or viewing these things?
Okay. Um, Before indulging in that question, I want to invite my brothers and sisters out there, my nieces and nephews out there. Sorry, I'm a brother, a son, and an uncle. Okay, to understand that not every meal or not all the meal that we will eat are in our lifetime is served or eaten in one sitting. Okay, again, not every meal that we need for consumption in our lifetime is served or eaten in one sitting. So this sitting in itself is but a meal being served. So we will not be covering everything there is to cover. We will not be knowing all there is to know. We will definitely not be understanding all there is and needed to understand. But one thing you have to commit to in this partake is for a digestive relevance. So you have to understand that we are but only going to cover what must be covered in this sitting. That said, there are three things also that must be remembered as we begin this dialogue. Is that we will speak within three frameworks: context, its meaning, its impact tied with implementation. Okay, context, meaning, and impact tied with implementation. That is what we'll be speaking in. And then extending from that, we will look at rectification measures that you, daughter and son of Alkebulan, need pragmatize, implement, so that you take ownership of outcomes. Now, Dada Makiba, you mentioned something, our country. Why would we talk about our anything in relation to the Eurasian? Now, let it be understood, the Eurasian represents the Asians and the Europeans. Collectively, they will be referred to as the Eurasians. And the people of Alkebulan, misnomered readily in the color degenerate coding of black, in the misnomers as Africans, Negroes, niggers, and all that stuff, they, you, I, are Alkebulan. That is what I'll be referencing. So in that regard, there is no hour with the Eurasian. The people of Alkebulan do not have our country as it relates to the Eurasian. What you see happening today in your lifetime, son and daughter of Alkebulan, is nothing new when it pertains to relations with the Eurasian concerning the people of Alkebulan. Again, what you see in your lifetime is nothing new in relation to the Eurasians' interactivity with the people of Alkebulan. For a people in the Eurasian that are anti-life, that are anti health, that are anti-humanity, which is you, daughter and son of Alkebulan, what do you think they will not be anti-truth?
Yeah.
You have to see and understand that a people of Alkebulan have but only taken ownership of falsehood. You see, I can do something to you just one time. That is your brother, Agbekukwesi, initials AK, doing something to you that caught you off guard. But something that persistently I keep doing is you allowing for it. So the question to ourselves is not what the animal does, but is how the human need recognize that they are dealing with animals and then interact with them accordingly. So George Floyd is but only, and I use that word intentionally, but only a name. But the events and circumstances is the nature of the beast in which a people hold claim to being part of in the hour. So the first realization is to learn how to castrate ourselves, decontaminate our minds from this seeming falsehood of partnership or togetherness with those who have contempt with life and truth.
That's powerful. We have a comment saying that's one of the things that keeps us divided in terms of ourselves and what other calls us. We are so divided with labels. But also that brings up another point. When you said that we have to castrate ourselves from thinking in terms of a collective unity with European culture, mindset, people, systems. In Carter G. Woodson's book, he talked about us being a miseducation of the Negroes, the book I'm referencing, and he talked about us having sort of a split personality because our education is based on being subservient to someone else. And of course, I'm paraphrasing. So how do we now approach education in re-educating ourselves to have that understanding that we have to look at this separately and not, well, we're all together, kumbaya?
Excellent question. Well, we have to look at things from the back end before we understand what is staged. Let's look at some terms. The first one is this thing, the mind. What is the mind? The title on this topic line is Emancipating Yourself from Mental Slavery. What is the mind? Those of us in our 40s, those of us in our 50s, what have you dedicated yourself to learning and understanding about the world you've come to find? And I say again, what have you dedicated yourself to in learning and understanding about the world you've come to find? The mind is the center of all reality. It is amazing how those in sports will dedicate time, resources, effort, and all that there is to literally perform and be counted at a certain level in a game. It is amazing how those around them will support them in whatever capacity they must, by taking them to league games, by taking them to buying gears for them and the like. All these efforts because of what? A promise of a payday.
Yeah, that's true.
But why this dedication is not put in regards to Alkebulan and that which you must do in self-knowledge? Because, my brothers and sisters, you have been taught to have contempt for the very person that you are. Hence, there is no payday with Alkebulan in the mind that has been contaminated. And how is this contamination done? It is done primarily through the premise of socialization, which is synonymous for education. Again, it is done through the premise of socialization, which is synonymous for education. You see, education takes two forms: the formal and the informal. The formal is where you are literally paying within the auspice of a learning center or an institute to receive a set of instructions that prepares you accordingly to what? To meet a desired outcome or a desired intentionality. So the question for a people of Alkebulan: who is preparing you? For what desired intentionality? Who has defined that? And what is the outcome? The outcome is what you see of people today dislodged and disconnected from an authentic self. So the socialization process in itself, in the formal context, is an indulge that literally bastardizes the minds. But bastardization of the mindset does not mean that you are not functional. Oh yes, yeah, wow, you are functional, but dysfunctionally. So when you and I premise this answer with, if you're in your 40s, if you're in your 50s, what are you doing to understand this and rectify it? That's the question. Because when you talk about education, socialization, if in the formal context, on whose dictates, whose definitives, and whose intentionalities for outcomes, whose reality is the educational pedagogy serving. And if you and I, my brothers and sisters, cannot reinstate that of Alkebulan, that means I am not living that of Alkebulan. Hence the difficulty. So it's to be authentically true to self. Mahitaji ya binafsi kwanza, demand of self first, what you request of others. That is the premise of attending to and also offering that which is of right education, that which is of right socialization. Must be able to solve your problems. You must be prepared to solve your problems. So if, like the athlete, trains and dedicates themselves to be at the highest of levels in their respective discipline, what about you, son and daughter of Alkebulan?
And I think that's true. We have another comment that says, we fought so hard to assimilate, now we're realizing it was a mistake. But I think in order to rectify, we have to get to that point of realization. So when we have been brought up in a society that has miseducated us, and we have not yet done the things to rectify, say, the bastardization of the mind, as you put it, how do we, first of all, recognize this? And what do we do to rectify it? Because of children of the African diaspora, how do we know what to attach ourselves to in terms of culture and tradition? We've lost our language, we've assimilated, we take on these roles that are not our culture. So, how do we recognize that we are not operating as a functional Alkebulan being, and we're actually operating with somebody with two opposing, split personalities? Basically, split personality disorder.
Yeah, we chuckle, and the seriousness of the matter actually is a ticklish thing, lest we cry tears of blood. How do we recognize? How do we know and come to do anything? We learn.
Right.
How do we know and come to do anything? We learn. How does a child, a baby, know that they are in pain? There are symptoms, things that are relevant, that are revealed, okay, to what? To ascertain that this person is in pain. This person knows they are in pain, even though they may not know to define it as, quote, pain, using that context of a word, but they know that they are in pain and they express it even without knowing the name for it. And so those who are older, who are experienced in certain capacities which the child may not be, are able to what? Identify and what? And pay reference to what that expression is. But all the same, because the child does not know how to how to define that, but they know how to express it because it's automated within. In the same context, Alkebulan is automated and engineered within. And anything that is not adding to the optimization of your Alkebulan liberty, you will begin to show symptoms. And the symptoms are very clear. Just as an ingest of that which is not righteous for your physio, you begin to react in certain ways that are not comfortable. But we don't talk about comfort in the context of pleasure. We talk about comfort in the context of, uncomfortable in the comfort of imbalance. When I am not feeling well, you are not feeling well. You feel it, you know it. When a child is hungry, you don't have to tell the child this is a breast. There is milk that day for inside that breast. That child finds that breast. For those who have nursed children, babies, you only but lay them on your belly, they will find the source of nutrition. But for a people who have an addiction for the Eurasian falsehood, theirs is to hang on. Theirs is to want to hang on. And Alkebulan has no time and will not make time for such. And you must have no time, nor make time for self in that regard either. There has to be total tolerance for nothing but health. When you think, but you can only cheat a healthy protocol, you can have a fast food here and there, you but only retrogress what should be a progressive indulge. So the thing here, my sister and my good people out there listening live or later on, it's not that we don't know. Nah, hapana. It's we don't care to know.
Right. That's true. Now, what about when people have the idea that the responsibility is just not ours, but it's also of the European or Eurasian, because we are in this society and we are the ones faced with this injustice. So they decide to fight it with protest or the political process or these different movements. And that for them is the remedy, because essentially what you're saying is we have to take responsibility to choose to live from that Alkebulan mindset and recognizing and owning that as who we are instead of what was given, which we're going to get into that. But what if people are like, well, why can't we protest? Because we need to change the laws. Why can't we vote? We have to change the laws. We have to change these systems. Where is sort of, is there an answer in that?
And I will invite your participation in this, right? You just give me an answer to this series of questions. 1 plus 6 is what?
7.
1 plus 6, sister?
1 plus 6 is 7.
Oh, I thought you said 11.
I know what 1 plus 6 is.
Okay. All right. 7 plus 0 is what?
7.
4 plus 3 is what?
7.
5 plus 2 is what?
7.
All right. Variables within context, an outcome within meaning. Again, the question is, for those who are in their 40s and their 50s, that means they were birthed in the 70s and the 60s. What have they taken time to understand about the world they've come to find? For those who are in their 30s and their 20s, what have we taken time to understand about the world you've come to find? For those who are within their teens, what are we doing in informing them through our lived example of what the world they must architect constitutes of? For those who are in their 60s and in their 70s, who are definitely withering out, what are we ensuring we are learning? Yes, even from the mistakes, so that we can limit our own. You see, all those variables lead to the same meaning, the outcome. Why do we hold accordance in relevance to degenerates that are proven unequivocally through centuries and millenniums before you and I's lived time here in this realm, that they do not accord to life that which you, as a son and daughter, a steward of humanity, are accorded with? So, in what do you seek partnership with such, when again their lived meaning of interact has been equivalent and equated to decadence, no matter where in the world they have tread. So, why am I, why are you, if right of mind, looking for a partnership with those who contaminate minds? But unless I myself am out of my right mind. So there is no partnership but with self and those of Alkebulan who have the interest of posterity as the forefront and back front and the side front of their interactivities. Hence the urgency to attend to matters the way they should. Focused in unity of relevance to my contributions, that I understand that that latter in contributions is but to serve those beyond my lifetime. And there is no Eurasian that I will allow into the fold and spit on the sacrifices of my ancestors unless I am out of my right mind. There's no partnership.
So, how can we, children of the diaspora living in Western society, or even societies that still have remnants of this colonialism, what are, we need to know that we need to relearn and re-educate ourselves. But what do those steps actually look like? What do those steps actually look like in correcting the mindset of our people and ourselves? Because before we can correct it for our people and our communities, we have to correct it in ourselves. So, what does that look like for people living in this culture and society?
People living in this hemisphere, even on the mainland of Alkebulan and her 8 islands, all the peoples of Alkebulan across the globe need to recognize the first premise is what needs to be corrected. Again, the first premise of the question is what needs to be corrected. You see, before anything can happen, there's something that must happen. So things that happen are but in informed continuum or a progressional what? A progressional connection. Before my body, your physio can break down nutrients, something must happen. Nutrients must be presented to the body. So how can a people who look to rectify things or who look to better yet have things in a positive way don't even understand and have taken time to understand what first needs to be rectified? It's simply because, again, we do not assume and look to the responsibility of a lifetime beyond our lifetime. So that's the first premise. Alkebulan lives for those now and yet to come. That is the first premise. So when you and I understand that, then we can then know what should matter and what does not matter. Who should matter and who does not matter. So that ties into the question previously asked before. In the health of Alkebulan, the Eurasian or any Alkebulan appeases and bootlicker does not matter. You know, again, when you are of the clear understanding of your responsibility, you know what to focus on, and the first thing being, like you rightfully mentioned, self. For you cannot give of what you don't have. Again, for you cannot give of what you don't have. And by Alkebulan precepts, neither can you teach that which you don't live. Because when you live, you teach. Because your life is the example. So one has to purpose to understand that first, I have to live it, because life is the teacher. That which then must I live. The first thing, the second thing are what constitutes informing the mindset. Languages and symbols. Languages and symbols. When we begin to understand the nutritious implicates of this on the mindsets, just as taking the time to understand the nutritious implicates of what constitutes physiological consumption, we then know what should matter, what does not matter, who should matter, and who does not matter. And then we are then geared to attend to matters as they should matter. So, in then knowing the language of my tongue in reference and relevance to self misappropriates or does not identify me within the Alkebulan cultural reality, but misappropriates credit to the Eurasian. That is the first premise. Correct my reference in a name. But then, can you, son or daughter of Alkebulan, commit to doing that? If your name is John, Jean, Juan, all those are Eurasian. So if you come to that understanding, don't think about building anything here and there. Let's begin at the home. Can you look to correct that? Then when you can commit to that rectification, then you can look to lead implementations that are beyond your household. So that's the first thing. Get the mind right at home. Get the symbols right at home. The symbolic representation of partakes in Eurasian so-called holidays of any sort. What is the meaning? What is the implication? What is the impact? It but only shows participation that you endorse the decadence that has been what? Served up on your people for centuries to date. And that you are weak of mind. And yes, primed and deserve to be preyed upon. So if you cannot say, I will not, we will not take part in their thanksgiving, and not lie to yourselves that it means different from us. No, my friend, you are addicted. Begin to understand those. Begin to decontaminate yourself from those. Begin to correct these. then you begin the process of preparing to what? To appear at another level of Alkebulan responsibility.
Now, that brings to mind a book, Ishaka Musa Barashango's African People and European Holidays, A Mental Genocide. And when you talk about participating in European culture, you saw a lot of people dismissing the 4th of July festivities this year, all because of what happened. Now, some people will argue, oh, it's just a holiday or it's just a name. You know, if you think back on Roots, what they did to Kunta Kente's character, why is that important to, first of all, you said the first step was reclaiming our names in a Kabalan fashion, and two, begin to not to remove ourselves from participating in these things. Why is that important? People will be like, oh, that's the time I go to see my family. Oh, mine was named after my grandmother's grandmother. Why are these things contributing to our state of mental health?
First off, who are those people saying, oh, it doesn't matter, I'm going to see my grandma, who are those people who hold claims to those narratives? Who are they?
These are just people in the community.
Now, they are nobodies.
They're nobodies. Okay.
Yes, they are nobodies.
So
they
you
don't
heard it here. You're nobodies.
Yeah, wow. They are nobodies to the health of Alkebulan. They lack understanding, and for that they will toil in that ignorance. You see, it's okay not to know. That is not okay to be arrogantly ignorant and think Alkebulan will even give an ear or time to that stupidity. You are a nobody. I am a nobody. If mine is not to choose to gain an understanding what I otherwise don't understand, and then begin to take the necessary corrective measures to rectify that which must be. So all those saying those things, they are not even part of our discussion. But for those who care to understand the symbolic representation of what authorship and indulge entails, just as a woman who is misappropriated in her name, and I will use the terminology in the context of Anglo, bitch. If somebody calls you bitch and you answer to it, this person, let's say, is labeled a pimp. What you are literally saying to them symbolically is that you own my mind. So, in the symbolic representation, the impact and implementation of Eurasian demarcated dates of degradation, and yours and I indulge, who just came to this earth and haven't dedicated ourselves to understanding the pedagogy of today's realities, and I am spew in my ignorance, is just. I'm but only showing I am out of my mind. So again, it's about ensuring that we dedicate ourselves to understanding the implications of things and seeing to rectification. Because if you have not offered anything, know that in subscription to it, you subject your faculty to what it must entail in outcomes or consequences to your faculties. Again, if you have not authored anything, your subscription to it upon indulge will materialize that which is intended to. So for I, as a Eurasian, seeing a daughter or son of Alkebulan participating in my Thanksgiving, all I say is, look at these damn niggas. That is exactly what plays in the symbolic representation. When you stand up, when I stand up and salute symbols of decadence in flags and sings anthems of decadence to the spiritual essence of our people, use languages that do not at all speak to our authenticity, and then say we have different names and the like. Yes, just like your body has different organs, but are they all healthy? It's not about the various names, it's about the authorship and the health it brings to the faculties of a people. So if that which does not add to health and you hone on to it in the sentimental, ignorant terms of endearment because you have an addiction, I have an addiction, then my brother, my sister, my niece, my nephew, wahala for you. Wahala for you. And yes, you don't matter. You are a nobody, and Alkebulan will be just fine without you.
Now, I think it's important to mention how our current state of minds, and I say our because I feel like this is something that really takes, like you said, the dedication and work. It's not like, hey, I read a book, I'm woke, whatever. We'll talk about that too. But um, can you talk about how our current mindset really affects our mental state and why it is a mental health issue in our community?
Our current mindset as a collective is a mindset that has been warped through deception, distortions, and decadence in the context of narratives and symbols. Okay, so we're talking about as a collective a warped mindset. That's why, yes, as a collective, the realities of one that has been shifted out of their paradigm of authenticity brings at the end of the equation an outcome in total results that you see consistent around the globe of a people again collectively shifted out of what their reality of authenticity. So it is important to understand that that is what has to be rectified, the mindset. But just as anything prior to addressing, one has to come to an understanding of what it is. So you see an aeroplane, as big as it is, as huge as it is, where is that machine controlled? In a small area. A small area that is dubbed the cockpit. With what? Small liana buttons. Our bodies, a bacteria, a virus that does not belong in it goes in there. The what? It's small. Oh. It cannot even be seen normally by the, as we put, the naked eye. I don't know which eyes are closed, but that said, it's the small things that what constitutes the great results. So for a people who need rectified restoration to health, why don't we pay attention to the details? Oh, that is what leads to the comment prior to this question. It's just a meeting with family. It's just a time for us to, you are not paying attention to the small details. Because those who do wicked have three things that they observe: disciplined, they are very disciplined. They don't care about people's feelings. They could care less how you or I feel. The third thing is they are focused on seeing to the outcome. Again, they are highly disciplined. They don't care about feelings of people. And they are so focused, and they will invest, that means resources, in the outcomes that they desire. So, my sister and our brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews out there, what about then those who seek to do good or who seek good? Where is the discipline? Why do you always give two hoots about people's feelings, including your own? Why? And then you do not want to vest resources into that which must become? Oh, but let's wish upon another person's star that they will bring it to us. That is why, yes, in discipline, you will want the Eurasian to be a partner. You want the snake, the poisonous snake, the leopard that preys on the antelope. What partnership is there? Because one lacks discipline, and not because you don't have discipline, sons and daughters of Alkebulan. No, 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 no. Hapana, Dabi, nya. It's not because you don't have discipline. It's because we are not right of mind. We are not right of mind. And the first premise to getting right of mind is dictating and determining that you will see to doing it. So when you talk about mental health, it is not anyone's responsibility but mine and yours for self. So that in the state of health, we can what? Extend and show to those to follow what health lives like. Yo.
Oh, wow. Definitely. Now, because of the political and social climate, there's a lot of people going around saying, oh, yeah, it's so woke and conscious and woke. Is that even a thing? And if you are, in fact, conscious and woke, what does that look like? Who do you become? How do you identify as such, besides just saying these fancy words that we've now added to our vocabulary to express some type of, I don't know what we're expressing with it, but what does that look like? In
The only question Alkebulan will ask is, I'm conscious, I'm woke. What are you woke doing? You are woke doing what? For who? And to whose benefit? Posterity wise. Yeah, you can be conscious. I'm conscious. I'm awake. But doing what? That's a question for yourselves, Alkebulan.
And now we have different groups also within our community, people who identify as Pan-Africanists, RBG, they're with everything RBG. Some people, and I'm not, attacking different groups or sects, Rastafari, Nation of Islam, Hebrew Israelites, where they're part of these groups for quote unquote Black, empowerment and just sort of liberty and a type of lifestyle. Would you say that we need to be more a part of these type of groups? Like, what type of things do we actually have to be a part of and have to take upon ourselves as being responsible for now the reconditioning of our minds?
Beautiful. There are stages to any healing process. And if I may use the example of a broken arm, we do have a thing that we will put on a broken arm called a cast. But that cast must only serve for a while. Failing which to recognize and be taught when to take it off, something called atrophy, muscle atrophy begins to set in. These are just Latin words for loss of muscle mass. Now, all honor and praise and gratitude to those of our people who implemented things at certain times because that is what they knew at that time. It's called surviving. It's called part of the healing process. But just as with a cast, it will serve but for a time. And at a certain time, it must be cast away. Failing which, there will be the law of diminishing returns that set in. So all these names are but only identifiers of things that needed to be done within incubation of the necessary process of healing. Yes. And we give thanks and honor and praise. But we're at a stage, my brothers and sisters, where we have to understand that the time has come for a different level of our process of healing. So just as a caterpillar goes into the cocoon to become a butterfly, it's a stage, a process. But in the Alkebulan proverb, we cannot use a caterpillar mindset to assume or attend to the responsibilities that a butterfly must. So it's up to those who care to understand what time it is to begin to know what to shed. And yes, shedding is a painful process. Don't ever think or deceive yourself that it will not be. But the question here is, are you doing the necessary, or we want to hone on with what is comfortable at the expense of what must become? But before any moves, one must seek to gain understanding. So all these entities, once again, all honor and praise to those who began, founded, and those who contributed to growing it to the stage that we are at today. But Alkebulan needs to be in a different dimension, which we have to understand our responsibilities to it. And that, yes, constitutes shedding that which served but for a time.
So we have basically out of time, but I did want to ask, you said to begin this understanding, we need to learn, change our names is one thing, changing our names to something, not something, to our African or Alkebulan names. And also you said to not participate in certain celebrations of Eurocentric or European culture. What else can you give the people that they can do? What is, you always talk about what's necessary. How do we begin to know and define what's necessary? And also, um, in the process of, I guess, our metamorphosis here, changing here, what are the things that are important to understand? Because many people will say, well, I only identify as African American. I don't know what tribe I come from. I don't know this. Or if you're from the Caribbean diaspora, well, hey, I'm Jamaican, I'm Haitian, I'm Tegan, I'm whatever. Or, I'm from the continent, you could say now, okay, you're Nigerian or South African or Ethiopian. So how do us here in this diaspora begin to identify and do what are the steps that are necessary for us to take to begin transforming our minds and our identity into one of Kabbalah?
Well, I mean, excellent question. The thing that must be asked of the individual is, again, I do not seek to mere change, but I look to transformation, because transformation necessitates change, but change does not necessarily implicate transformation. So we talk about correcting names, not changing it. We see the difference there.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So when we begin to understand things within that context, then we will know with direction where and what to seek in the path towards the necessary rectifications. So, in the sense of, if I, like there are, for instance, we talk about socialization in the context of the formal. There are beautiful institutes that have been set up, like what do you call it? Freedom Home Academy. Okay. I learned about Liberated Minds the other day. And then even in South Florida, we have New Alkebulan STEM Education Center. The question here to ourselves, let me just hone even on that. What commitments are we making to ensuring that these institutions that have been set up hold relevance to our participatory necessity, whether fiscally, whether membership wise, whether any other means to keep them flowing. And I'll take the time to, and I know we talked about quote out of time, right? Yeah, we dictate time, right?
Yeah.
I'll take the time to challenge the males on this call, to challenge again the males listening even after. What are you doing as a masculine presence to carve and restore that which must be of Alkebulan? Because the feminine essence nurtures that which is instituted. Feminine nurtures that which is instituted. Masculine establishes.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what am I arresting that is wrong, that has been wronged? Look at your family members, beginning with yourself. Does the name that is labeled to me accredit the right reality? Make moves. If it does not, are there institutes that, even if I don't have any children to attend, I can be a participatory member of its liberty because it's a necessity? Are you making a fiscal contribution without you needing to be plastered all over the place? Are you? Then don't be talking. Shut your mouth about what the Eurasian is doing. Is when the Are you arresting situations in, yes, whatever capacity that you can? Ask yourself. Then, to my females, ask yourself, am I ensuring that I am not adopting the sickness of the Eurasian female suffrage and taking ownership of that as my own, and then extending it to the males or to my interactions with the males? All this feminisms and all that stuff has no place in Alkebulan mindset. Know that you are the incubators of today, yesterday, and tomorrow. You are the incubators of vision, that which carries a significant responsibility beyond the seed planter. Come on. Understand this, and understand this very well. You are an incubator of vision. You are an incubator of restitution. You are an incubator of restoration. The question is, are your faculties maintained in the Alkebulan hygienic narrative? If not, proceed accordingly to ensuring. Because when that masculine essence plants that seed, yes, daughter of Alkebulan, you will give birth to it. And it's all on how you take care of yourself, and we ensure that you are taken care of. So the males, begin to run assessments in your household of that which needs decontamination, beginning with things on the walls that need not be there, beginning with participation in things that are not of your ascribe, and beginning with the commitment to commit to things and matters, yes, beyond your immediate rewardative participation. So all these schools that I mentioned, from New Alkebulan STEM Education Center to Liberated Minds to Freedom Home Academy, get in touch with them.
Yeah. It's also the Rugu Academy. So many.
Go ahead, sister.
No, I said there's so many. Rugu Academy, there's so many. We just have to, like you said, be committed, and as Joan said, awareness, discipline, self-healing, and focus.
Beautiful.
We
Yeah.
do have a question from the audience.
Okay.
It says, how do I know or find out my ancestral name from Africa? My African name was taken from my ancestors once they reached the shore of America. So how would they begin correcting, the naming process? And I think also, it would be good to mention having rites of passage programs for not only our children, but for ourselves too, because you said that we need to do this with guidance. So
When you cast a net into the sea when you are fishing, what is drawn into the net?
fish, everything. Depends.
Right? All right. What is drawn into the net are various kinds of fish. You are not guaranteed one type of fish. But if you're in a specific area and you know the type of fish that dwell within that area, and you cast your net there, what do you anticipate will be in the net? That kind of fish. So with the name, nothing was taken except the mind. When you take back your mind, you will know where to cast your net to get the name. You begin with genealogy. AfrikanAncestry.com is one that I highly recommend. The questions that folks ask is, but what's the cost of it? I say, hey, you see that door? Okay, walk out of it. When you start asking about the cost of things prior to seeing the value in things, you are not ready. When you determine value and you then ascertain cost, you make provisions to bring it to pass. Discipline. So when I talk about AfrikanAncestry.com and you want to legitimately follow the path to that which you must, begin there. Get a clue. Begin to connect the dots. And so just as a name translates into a meaning, when you find, I am of X and Y people, you are of the same tree, just a different branch. So the name in itself represents that branch. So I'm being Kwesi as part of my first name, where the A represents Kwesi, Agbeku Kwesi. For those familiar with Kwesi, they know the meaning is a male birthed on a Sunday. So anybody with the name Kwesi, you know. So these are the things to familiarize yourself with. And how do you do that? By beginning to seek the information. Just as those who seek people's net worth and people who is sleeping with who and whatnot, we find a way to seek what is unnecessary.
True.
But then what is necessary, we act all oblivious because we are not serious about the endeavor. And when we are serious, it's within you. You will be guided accordingly. Yawa.
Oh, wow. Dada Ife says, anyone can contact me to correct your name legally, but also share how I traced my roots.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So we have people on the line who are willing to help guide and walk you through that process as well. So, do you recommend, we talked about the different groups, Pan-African groups, different religious groups, but in terms of rites of passage and African spirituality, how does that come into play with, deepening the understanding and connection to ourselves?
We have to understand first what spirituality entails. What spirituality and religion, they are antibodies. That's they're antagonistic. Religion is an antagonistic has an antagonistic relation to spirituality. Let's not be mistaken. When it comes to these things, there has to be a dedicated time to understanding. So the first thing that must be known is what is the context of spirituality? What is the context of religion? Spirit, without delving into that partake, as on this table, remember the serving today, we do not want to go into what? Gluttony. Because no matter how good a food is, if you are but eating in a serving and you continue to eat, not only will what you've eaten now become disgusting, but even the good thing that you are eating, because you are shoving it in a full space, we may even what? Throw it all out. So that question in itself, I will just answer it with just this sip of water. That religion and spirituality are not synonymous, contrary to the Eurasian portrayal of it. Alkebulan, you are a spirit people. You are the cradle of creation. You are the mother of humanity. Religion is a defilement of spiritual essence. Learn the difference, and again, you have the engineering within you to begin that process. And at another sitting, if the ancestors will it and the elders permit it, we can delve into that understanding. But for that moment.
Give thanks for that. So we're going to get ready to close. Do you have any other recommendations, books, programs, anything coming up that people can participate in and deepen their study?
Definitely. I have this much. Do not continue to gather bricks without building at least that one-room shelter. Do not continue to gather information, my people. Being woke, being conscious, being informed, and all this stuff without applying, without application of the necessary. That which, when the wind and the storms and the natural whatever must become comes, lest we find ourselves not having attended to what? To duty, but just gathering bricks. What foundation have you laid with the bricks that you've covered? What foundation, what structure are you laying? Or you just want to show how many bricks you have piled up, yet you and your daughters and your spouses and your sons and your nieces and your nephew continue to be beaten by the elements while you refuse to build.
course.
So this is what I have to extend to you, my good people, is that three things you should not ever, ever fear because they are inevitable. Hence, that must be the reason why you do what you must in your breath time, so that others may continue while you're with breath, and most importantly, when you are without. And these three things being, do not look to be liked. Inevitably, you will not be liked by those who benefit off of untruths, beneficiaries and benefactors of falsehood, those who are apologists to the latter, those who don't see beyond a lifetime of themselves present, those who fear to grow because you challenge them with yours, those who have a contempt for health and sanity, those who just want to remain in the destitute state of cowardice and carelessness, will not like you. And as I share with good people, and I shared with some good people the other day, as an elder of mine told me once upon a good time, you will not be liked in this world by one person or another. But be sure that with you not being liked, you are not being liked for what? Doing what is right. Yeah, wow.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That's the first thing. The second thing is you must know not to fear expiration from this flesh. That is an inevitable. So then why must you be scared to apply yourself in the name of I may be harmed? By who? By what? You are Alkebulan, the author of humanity and sanity. With breath is a gift that, though packaged in this flesh, you must deliver in competency content, if you will, tongue twister, to the people that are here today and that are yet to come, in honor of those that have come before you and I.
Yes, I say.
So why fear the inevitable? We will expire from this flesh one way or another. So why not make that one way and another be that in which doing what you must?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, wow.
Number two, don't fear expiration. The Eurasian calls it death. We say transitioning. Now, the third thing, which is inevitable, is that you have to expense resources, whether resource of time, fiscal, efforts, you have to expense. So why not expense in that which adds value to restorative and rectification measures for self and those loved ones around you and those beyond you? Expensing on resources is inevitable. Even the beggar expenses the time they take to beg. But Alkebulan does not beg, because beggars do not lead and leaders do not beg. We collaborate, we participate, but do not beg. Expense resources in that which matters, in mind and in building. In mind and in building. Because of all the foolish things that we indulge ourselves so carelessly in, it has to be bought. It has to be bought. There is no give us as free from sinking. Amnesty, by the way, it's a good movie. Check it out. You have to expense. But if you don't have the capacity and the means now, the question is, tomorrow, will that be the same song? That means you are not serious. Because you are expensing on something or another. Check your priorities. Reprioritize and begin to channel what must be where it must be. Yeah. So remember those three things. Okay? Very important to remember those three things. Very, very important. Do not look to be liked. Secondly, do not fear expiration. Okay? And thirdly, you will have to expense one thing one way or another. So reprioritize and expense where you must. And if you are not in a position today with resources that has to be channeled elsewhere, what are you doing about ensuring that you are in a better position tomorrow? Not next year, tomorrow. Get very serious, because again, we are not in this realm forever. In this form, that is.
And I know I said that was my last question, but I did have another question I really think is important.
Go ahead.
What do you think is our biggest challenge with unifying? And how do we correct that?
Our biggest challenge to unifying is just that terminology, our. You have to castrate yourself. I have to castrate myself from that terminology of our. It has to begin with self. When I am not united within self, how the heck do I expect to unite with anybody else?
That's true.
And the question then I have to ask self is, unite around what? Because unity has to be premised around something. We must be united. We must be united. Around what? Yeah. That question is never asked, because yes, people do not want to take authentic responsibility. They want to dwell in the what? In the glitters of nothingisms in language and the like, and find our descendants in the same destitute predicament. No. So unity begins with self, begins with rectification, begins with what? Restoration. There are people who talk of reparation, which we'll get in at another date, or if ever the ancestors and the elders permitting another engage. We talk of all these things, but reparation, my friends, should be seen as restitution, because you do not seek from someone something which they have stolen. You take. But if your mind is not right, I'll continue to look for the unity that is as fleeting as a mirage on the road. Yet I won't quench that thirst. Yeah, wow.
Wow. Well, thank you so much.
Asante sana, Dada. Asante sana. And really appreciate all that you're doing. Really appreciate your platform. And again, build and grow it. And folks, let folks know about this platform. Invite folks to this platform to gain the knowledge that they need to apply. Okay, to apply. That's what this platform is about. Gain knowledge to apply. Don't be a hoarder of knowledge and a builder of nothing.
Yes, it is. Ashe. Asante sana,
Thank you, Baba.
Dr. AK.
Karibu. Asante to everybody. Till we meet again in this life or the next.
We will do this.
Kwaheri for now.
Kwaheri.
Yawa.
Okay, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that discussion with Dr. AK. We look to have him back on in the future. In the meantime, follow our page. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram at Cultivate Life. And, I think the big takeaways here are, defining what our focus is. And we have to do that for ourselves first. We talk about liberating ourselves and, the systematic racism and oppression, but there are things that we can do to begin to free ourselves, and it starts in the mind first. And Dr. AK spoke of some just very simple things: educating yourself. First of all, you have to identify and realize, and then have the discipline, the determination, and the commitment. The commitment is what's very important to what you say you're going to do. We have information, AfrikanAncestry.com, so you can find out your genealogy and begin to correct your name. There are many African-centered education centers, both here in South Florida and online. The one in South Florida is New Alkebulan Education Center for your children. My children are personally students there, and it's just an excellent school. And they do many things in the community, not only for the children, but for the adults too. Begin taking stock of your home. What images do you have around your home? What are you doing? What are you celebrating? This really is a discussion on our mental state, and it's very important if we want to move forward as individuals, as family members, as a people, to correct that. And to pass that on to the next generation, because what are we leaving them? What are we showing them? We can call upon our ancestors, Huey Newton, Malcolm, everybody that we revere, Nat Turner, Harriet. They did something. They did something with the information. They did something with the knowledge, and that is what we have to do. We have to commit ourselves to the doing process. Okay, not just the talking and the saying and the, hey, that's great, and sharing memes, okay, but we have to, what are we doing? So that's it for today's show. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, like and subscribe and follow. Until then, be well, stay well, cultivate life.